Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 1111 Matrix Code Revealed. As always, I'm your host, Garrett King. All right, it has been a few weeks since I've done a video, and I do apologize, folks. Life just gets in the way sometimes. My day job keeps me very, very busy. To the point where I'm working late into the night at times, and I'm working on the weekends. So we're working on a huge project, and this project, it's vital that it gets done, and gets done quickly. So it does eat up quite a bit of my free time, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm not complaining. But hopefully when this project is complete, then I will have more free evenings, more free weekends to dive back into this research, and take it in directions that I've been wanting to take it down. These avenues, I've been wanting to take this research down different avenues, and just, haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. But once that happens, I have no doubt that this research is going to just expand and expand and expand. So it'll be exciting to see exactly where it's going and where it's going to end up. But what I wanted to do today was kind of go off of the last video that I did. And in particular, this number that showed up in the last video with the value of 4,851. Okay. Now, that number comes from that phrase that was generated from the numbers 407 and 704 and words and phrases within the Torah that contain those values. I talked about this in the last video, so I don't want to go through the whole thing again. So if you're just jumping in, you're interested, you're curious, go check out the previous video, and then you'll see how all of this connects. But that number, 4,851, I wanted to dive in and see if there was any deeper meaning in the number. And there is. Obviously, there's a lot of deeper meaning in a lot of numbers. We just have to dig deep enough. But that number, 4,851, upon doing some research, I discovered that number is the 98th triangular number. So if we were to look at that number, 4,851, visually, it would look like this, okay? So this is a visual representation of the 98th triangular number, okay? Which again is 4,851. So we're looking at 4,851 individual dots, okay, that make up this triangular pattern. Now, what's interesting about this being the 98th triangular number is the number 98 itself. It is the value for the phrase, He is God. Okay? He is God. Now, the question becomes, well, He. Who are we referring to as He? Is it Jesus? Is it this being that came up in the research last time? The one where it talks about, our Father brought us here, DNA in the writings of a father buried. Now, you'll have to go back in later videos that I did where I expanded upon Michael Drosnin's research Bible code research where he found a code that talks about how a being arrived here in a craft. There was DNA in the vehicle. Now, again, are we referring, or is this code referring to that being as God? My take is possibly, but not in the way that we're thinking. Okay. So, and this is just a theory, so just bear with me. Okay. If a being did arrive here and seeded the entire planet with human life, and let's say that that story, that chronicle was recorded and made its way through generation after generation after generation after generation. Okay. I could see where, through the course of time, people would look back and view that being arriving here as a god. But would that have been that being's ultimate goal? No, I don't think so. I think their ultimate goal was to seed life, to continue life. Obviously, it was bringing DNA here for a purpose of some kind. Now, is that possibly because their planet, or their, wherever it is that he came from, that they destroyed their own planet, and so he is bringing life to continue that life elsewhere? Possibility. But let's say that, again, that whole thing is documented, and through generation after generation after generation, the story gets changed. Okay? As stories often do. I mean, think about it. How many times have you sat down and told someone a story, and then that person repeats that story to somebody else, and then that person repeats it, and then that person repeats it, and then that person repeats it, and by the time it finally gets down to, I don't know, the 100th person, the story's changed. It has not remained consistent. It happens all the time. But I also have this theory that the Torah, the book that we have today, is not the way that it was originally written. What if a malevolent being, not the one that we're referencing here, but one that demands ultimate power over everything, over everyone, what if it altered the story for its own purposes? And unbeknownst to it, the original story is somehow alive. Okay? We refer to the Bible as the living word. Okay? The living word. What if it is living in a way that we can't even begin to explain? And what I mean by that is, what if the original chronicle is altered, but yet the truth is still contained within it? Okay? And maybe that's why these Bible codes exist within the story that we have now. Because you simply can alter the surface text, but you cannot change the mathematical truth that is embedded within it. No matter how you rewrite it, the truth is always going to be contained within. So whether you change the original text from Hebrew, you change the words, put them in a different order, create an entirely different story from the original, whether you write it into English, it doesn't matter. It simply does not matter, because we look at it as though we are reading words when we know for a fact we are looking at a book of numbers. And no matter how you alter those numbers, the truth is always going to be contained within it. And I'll show you what I mean by this in just a second. So let's just look at the breakdown of this number, 4851, okay? So again, it being the triangular or the 98th triangular number, 98 being the value for He is God. Now, the number 4851 does something interesting. We know that there is what is known as the comma code. So you take any number as it expands beyond 3 digits. And so, for example, 4851 is expanded beyond 3 digits. What I mean by that is we have 851, and then we have 4, which is separated from the other 3 by this comma, okay? So when we add those two numbers together, 851 and the number 4, the new number becomes 855, okay? And the one thing that we have to constantly keep in mind is mirror reflections. And this will all make sense, hopefully, here in just a second. So when we take 855 and add its mirror reflection of 558, we get a new number, which is 1,413. Again, this is a number that is separated by a comma. So we must do the same thing. Take 1 plus 413, and we get 414. Again, continue the process of adding the mirror reflection. So the mirror reflection of 414 is simply 414. We get 828. Okay, 828 plus its mirror reflection of 828 is 1,656. Again, we do the same thing. It's going to be a number separated by a comma. So we add 1 plus 656, we get 657. Add its mirror reflection of 756, and suddenly we're back to 1,413. 1413. Okay, and then 1 plus 413, we're right back to 414. So if we were to continue that process, okay, of adding the mirror reflection, it's going to cycle back to itself. It's going to cycle back to the number 414. Now, here's what's interesting about the number 414. The gematria value for endless light or infinite light is 414. So again, think about this. We have this number, 4,851. It's the 98th triangular number. 98 is the value for He is God. This number, 4,851, cycles. It has a cycle process. It cycles back to 414, which is endless light. Now, if we take 414 and add it to 98, the value for He is God, we get 512. Okay? And 512 just so happens to be the equivalent of 8 times 8 times 8. And as we've seen in the past, 888 is the gematria value in Greek for the name Jesus. Okay? So again, it always comes back to a reference of Jesus. And as I've talked about, Jesus being the code word, if you will, for this energy source that courses through everything, which would be this endless light. This endless light. Now, something else interesting about the number 4,851. If we take those digits and multiply them, okay, so 4 times 8 times 5 times 1, we get 160. And 160 is the value for image. Image. Okay? What does the surface text say that God did? He created us in his image. Okay? So, again, go back to what I was just saying about the surface text being altered. Some of it is there being reused by a malevolent being, a being that demands power over all things and everyone. Okay? But again, deep within. We're looking deep within. We're looking at numbers because, again, the Torah, the Bible, is simply a book of numbers. And we see this. He is God, endless light, this reference to Jesus, and this word for image. Now, one of the things I've been exploring here lately is the idea that, I mean, it's more than an idea. It's proven that light creates matter. Okay? When two photons collide, it creates matter. Which ties this all back into our reality being either a hologram or a simulation that is simply reflecting or refracting light, and the whole entire thing is encased within this light. It is being generated by this light. And again, what is one of the things that we know that the character of Jesus says in the Bible? I am the way, the truth, and the light. So again, interesting connections here. All based off of this number, 4,851, which, as I showed you in the last video, sprang up out of nowhere. Because again, I just woke up because, well, the dog woke me up to go outside. And at a particular time, 407, okay, a number that we know adds to 11. So seeing this process here, how the number 4851 cycles back to 414, okay, it got me thinking. And so I wanted to perform a test to see what would happen. And I was surprised by where this ended up going. So I wanted to start very basic. I wanted to start with just a single digit. Why not start with 1? The very first number, 1. Through this test that I'm going to show you what I was doing, it connected me back to something that I've talked about in the very early days of this channel, something known as Vortex math. And at the time that I originally spoke of it, I didn't make the connection. I had no idea how deeply Vortex math was tied into the 1111 matrix code, or vice versa, how the code was tied into Vortex math. But it is. It is in a way that I didn't see until now. So let me show you something here. So what I did was, like I said, I started with the number 1 and thinking on mirror reflections, because this is important. Mirror reflections are important. So I began with the number 1 and added its mirror reflection of 1. Okay, so we know 1 and 1 becomes 2. We continue that process. So let me zoom in here. Okay. So 1 plus its mirror reflection of 1 is 2. 2 plus its mirror reflection of 2 is 4. 4 plus its mirror reflection of 4 is 8. 8 plus its mirror reflection of 8 is 16. And then this is where it starts to change, okay? Because 16's mirror reflection is 61, which becomes 77. Okay, so 61 plus 16, 77. Now 77 plus its mirror reflection of 77 becomes 154. 154 plus its mirror reflection of 451 becomes 605. And 605 plus 506 becomes 1111. Okay. Now I know what you're thinking. This is a number that now is separated by a comma. Okay. So 1,111. We'll get to that in just a second. But I think it cycles back to this number for a reason. And the more I think about this, it all ties back to the email that I received from someone named Bob, in which the subject and the body of the email was nothing more than the phrase, "a note from the universe." Okay? But let's continue this, okay? So let's go to the next number. The next number is 2. Well, we can already see what that process is going to be because we can see it within the first process. Okay, so 2 plus 2 is 4. But again, I just laid it all out so that we could see it visually. So if we take 2 plus 2, obviously we get 4. 4 plus 4. The mirror reflection is 8. 8 and 8 is 16. Same thing. 16 plus 61 becomes 77. 77 plus 77 is 154. 154 plus its mirror reflection of 451 is 605. 605 plus 506, and bam, we're right back to 1111. Okay? Now, we get to 3. Well, obviously, the process changes. And this is where 369 becomes important. So I broke it down, but the one thing that we know about 3, 6, and 9 is that it will not do the process that we see with all of the other numbers. And that's what I'm trying not represent, but that's what I'm trying to show you here, is that there is a deep, deep connection with the numbers 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8. All the numbers that do not contain 3, 6, and 9. But let's just go ahead and look at 3. So we know that 3 plus its mirror reflection of 3 becomes 6. 6 plus its mirror reflection of 6 becomes 12. So now we have 12, and its mirror reflection of 21 becomes 33. 33 plus 33 is 66. 66 plus its mirror reflection of 66 is 132. And then 132 plus 231 becomes 363. Okay, so if we continue this process, this number also cycles back to 363. Okay? So 363 plus its mirror reflection of 363 is 726. 726 and 627 becomes 1353. We take that comma, the number now becomes 354. Okay. 354 plus its mirror reflection of 453 is 807. 807 plus its mirror reflection of 708 is 1515. We do the same thing with the comma. So it becomes 516. 516 plus 615, the mirror reflection is 1131, which becomes 132, the number we see up here when we do the comma code. And then 132 plus 231 becomes 363. It cycles back. Okay. 6 does the same thing, and 9 will do its own thing because 9 is a master number, or the master number over all the others. Okay. So 9 and 9 is 18. 18 plus 81 is 99. 99 plus 99 is 198. 198 plus 891 is 1089, which becomes 90. And 90 plus its mirror reflection of 09 becomes 99. Again, it cycles back. Okay. But what fascinates me are the other numbers coming back to 1111. And this is where I'm talking about how deeply encoded this is to Vortex math. Okay. So let's go to the number 4. Okay. So we've done 1, 2, and I've already showed you 3, 6, and 9. So let's just focus on 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8. Okay. So we see the same process happening because we have 4 and 4 up here. Okay. So 4 and 4 is 8. 8 and 8 is 16. 16 and 61 is 77. 77 and 77 is 154, and so on. Okay. So it cycles back. It cycles back, and it keeps coming back to 1111. And again, I haven't forgotten the comma code. We'll get to that in just a second. But now we get to the number 5. Now the number 5, it's a longer process, but it still gets there. It still comes out to 1111. Okay, and here's the process. I'm not going to read all these numbers out because I know it gets tiresome, both for you guys and for me to say it. But you can see it here on the screen. Get out a calculator, do your own math, do the whole process. You'll see that it comes back to 1111. All right. And then we get to the number 7. And the number 7, it's an even longer process, but it still comes out to 1111. Okay. And all we're doing is taking a number and adding its mirror reflection. And then once that number gets past a 3-digit point, okay, so like right here, 1,837, we simply use the comma code to put the number back to a 3-digit number, okay? So for this example, 1,837 becomes 838 because it's 1 plus 837. And then we start the whole process again, and we just continue. We continue. It ultimately comes out to 11. And then lastly, we get to the number 8, and 8 also does the same thing. It cycles back to 1111. So this is the connection here, folks, okay? So why do all of the numbers except for 3, 6, and 9 cycle to this number 1111? And think about it. This all began with the numbers 333, okay, and 1111. That's why you have to think about this. Why, when we get to this comma code, we are converting these numbers back to a 3-digit number. We start to see the interconnectedness of these numbers. But as I just said, I haven't forgotten the comma code on 1111. So what happens if we apply that same code? So 1111, it would be 1 plus 111. It becomes 112. Okay, so we start the whole process. 112 plus its mirror reflection of 211 becomes 323. 323 and 323 is 646. And we continue that same process. As we continue the same process, when we get to the end, it cycles back to 1111. 1111. Now let me show you something here. How does that tie into Vortex math? Well, let's look. Let's go back up to the very first when we started. What is the sequence of Vortex math? Well, Vortex math is the sequence of 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, and then it repeats 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, and it's just an infinitely repeating number. Okay? Well, let's look here. We have 1. We have 1. We have 2, 2, 4, 4, 8, 8, 16. Okay. So 1 and 6 becomes what? 7. All right. Then we have 77. Well, 7 plus 7 is what? 14. And 1 and 4 is what? 5. Okay. And then we have 154. Okay. So that's 6 plus 4 is what? 10. 10 is 1 plus 0 is 1. It cycles back to 1. And then 605 is what? It's 11. So 1 plus 1 is 2. And it repeats that sequence. Okay. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. And again, you can see how it wasn't visible at the time that this 1111 matrix code is deeply connected to Vortex math. Now, what do we know about Vortex math? When we put all of the numbers into a triangle, again, interesting that we have a triangle with 9 at the top, 3 in the corner on the right, and 6 on the corner on the left. The numbers that are left are 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. And when we follow that sequence of Vortex math, what does it do? It produces the infinity symbol. The infinity symbol. Now think about that. Let me show you something here. So let's go over here and let's go to Google Translate. In English, we're going to type in the word infinity and translate it to Hebrew. Look right here. Look at the translation for endless light. This first word right here is light, and the rest of the portion, is endless. So infinity translates to endless. So right here, 414, this is essentially infinite light, endless light. It's the same thing. And over here in Vortex math, we see the infinity symbol forming. The connection that I'm making here, folks, or attempting to make, is that to me, this demonstrates even more that our reality, the universe, everything is a holographic projection. It is a simulation that is formed from this endless light, this infinite light. And again, as I just mentioned earlier, we know that matter is formed when two photons collide. Could that be what we're seeing here, this crossover in the infinity symbol, I combined those two words together. In the infinity symbol, that crossing point, could that be where two photons collide? And think about this. Think about how all this ties back into Tesla, saying if you only understood the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, you would have a key to the universe. Okay. Well, we're seeing that encased within the numbers 3, 6, and 9 is this vortex math and this number that it keeps cycling back to 11, 11. Again, this is a coded reality. It is a mathematically coded reality, and it is the code that makes up the simulation. We're seeing it play out time and time again. Now, what I was saying earlier about this being that arrives, okay, being interpreted as a god. Again, it's just my belief, but I don't think that it was that being's purpose or intention to be viewed as a god. I can see how through the course of time, he could be looked upon as being a god, as the firstborn father, as the code is demonstrated. But again, something tells me deep within that the being arrived here, and it, through this code, we demonstrate that it talks about a living spacecraft was sent. Again, a living spacecraft was sent. We don't quite know how it was living. One of the things that I find fascinating is just the other night on YouTube, they were broadcasting a congressional meeting over UAPs. And one of the things that was brought up was the possibility that these craft are living. But it was talked about that they were living in a way that we don't quite understand. But let's say that this being's arrival is recorded, okay, through text. Again. And that text was altered by some malevolent being who demands ultimate power over you, over me, over this domain. And rewrote that text into the form that we see it today. Okay, I know this is going to upset a lot of people, just me saying this. And I have already said, it's just a theory. It's just a thought. It's an idea. But it's not a new thought, and it's not a new idea. Okay? It's clearly based on other work. The Gnostic work, the books that have been left out of the Bible. Why were they left out? Why were they left out? Is it because if they were included, it would further advance the research? It would further advance what is contained within? The truth that can be pulled out? It's something to think about. It's something to think about. Because again, I keep going back to this, and I've struggled and struggled and struggled with this my entire life growing up as a kid, going to church. My family wasn't like regular church goers. My brother and I went to like a summer Bible camp thing. We were raised Baptist. But there was just so much about it that just made absolutely no sense. No sense. And I'm not the first person to say this, obviously. But again, when you read the Bible, we're told that God is this all-loving being, but yet in the Torah, this God also demands sacrifices, both human and animal. Why? It doesn't make sense. And why was he trying to keep information from Adam and Eve? Knowledge. Why was he trying to keep the knowledge from them? I can tell you why, because knowledge is power. And this being did not want them to have that power. Because this being is not the ultimate creator. It is a being that demands power through essentially force. If you don't do what it demands, you suffer a life of eternal damnation and suffering. And again, if you're an ultimate creator, if you're an ultimate being, if you are a God in the true sense of the word God, why do you have to create something to worship you? The surface level text, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And people tend to just overlook all of that. They tend to just overlook the sacrifices that, the Bible talks about, the animal sacrifices, the human sacrifices. Why? Why? Why do they focus on certain portions and completely disregard the others? Because it doesn't fit their narrative. And again, it doesn't make sense. A true God, if you will, should be a God of ultimate love regardless of who you choose to love, who you choose to spend the rest of your life with, etc., etc., etc. A true God should not have to create things to worship itself. So again, it's just something to think about. It's something to think about. And as I talked about in the beginning of this video, as I plan to expand this research outside of the Torah, I want to start looking at the books that were left out. Because again, they were left out for a reason. They were left out for a reason. And some of them that I've already looked into tell a completely different story than what the surface text is telling us, or what the current version is telling us. So again, you have to ask yourself why. Why do those books exist in the first place? Why do they exist in the first place? So this is going to go deep. It's going to get deeper and deeper and deeper as we continue to expand and try to find the ultimate truth. And I think it's there. It's hidden. It's hidden because we must find it. We must find it. It's been hidden from us. Again, by a being that I think, is malevolent, that doesn't want us to succeed because it demands all power that we have, that we contain. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I can't wait to start showing you some of these pieces as they come together. I've already begun the research. It's just compiling it and putting it together in a format that, makes sense. And I mean, there's already other channels out there doing it. I'm not finding, sometimes I feel like I am finding things brand new that no one's ever talked about. Okay. For example, this connection to 1111 and Vortex math. Never heard anybody talk about this. Okay. But these ideas that I'm talking about right now, I'm not the first to talk about them, and I won't be the last. So this is nothing new. It's nothing new. But again, for me, it's about finding the connections. It's about putting the pieces of the puzzle together so that the ultimate picture is revealed. And whatever that may be, it's there. It's just waiting for us to put it together. And again, the importance of numbers, people just, most of the time, people just ignore them. They just ignore them. But you shouldn't. They're there for a reason. They speak to us in a way that we need to pay attention to. Because math is going to be, it is. It's the universal language. And the truth is contained within it. And I believe we will find it. All right. I'm going to end this here. Felt like I kind of went on a little bit of a soapbox there. But yeah. I have no doubt too that I'll probably lose some subscribers with this video, and that's okay. That's okay. Not everyone is going to resonate with this information. They may not resonate with it now. They may not resonate with it ever. And that's okay. Just have to be okay with that. But those of you that can glean just a little bit of truth from this and, plan to stick around, see where this goes, again, it's going to be a mystery for us both where it's going to end up. But again, for the last time, I'm going to say this in this video. I think it is going to lead us to an ultimate truth. And that we will get there. All right. That's it for now. I hope you all take care. And until next time, we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.